Michael Kaskey-Blomain, CBS Sports, covers the NBA, covers the 76ers, and he joins us now for Inside the Sixers as they get ready to take on the Tampa-Toronto Raptors tonight down in Tampa. And Michael Kaskey-Blomain, MKB as he's affectionately known on this show and many other places, joins us here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. MKB, what's up, brother?
Fellas, what's going on?
All is good. 5-25, Broads brought up the Sixers are in their last 30 against the Raptors. Now, they had a tough night on Sunday night, so some of those were during the process years, to be fair. But that being said, they have struggled against this team. That being said, is this kind of a game that we were talking about how it's so hard in the regular season to, learn things anymore. Is this a game, though, that you are watching to try to learn something about where this team is?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that these 2-game series that we're getting this season is a great kind of a foreshadowing to playoff series. And Doc Rivers has said that in the past when we've asked him, if he likes these series where you play the same team back to back because of the scheduling this year. And he basically said it's a great opportunity to kind of, get prepared for things in the postseason where you see the same team and you have to make adjustments. So for me, obviously the Sixers were fully healthy last game. They're supposed to be pretty fully healthy again tonight. So I'm definitely going to be interested mainly to see the adjustments that are made to, obviously they don't want to lose back-to-back games to Toronto, and you're not going to take too much out of a game in February. But for me, I'm definitely going to be watching to see what Doc does, what changes he makes. Joel obviously had a rough night. It'll be interesting to see if they make any tweaks to kind of get him some easier looks in the offense. Just like small things like that to see how they're able to bounce back. I think it's, worthwhile to take out of a game like this for sure.
Now, you mentioned, they had a tough night. Now, Joel was getting doubled a lot. That was the strategy of Nick Nurse. They had open looks. They weren't hitting those shots. There was a lot of open looks that just weren't going down. So if they employ the same defense and the Sixers say, look, we'll take those open shots and they don't make them again, are you going to be disappointed?
I mean, to an extent, because you want your shooters to step up and knock down shots. That's going to be huge, obviously, for the Sixers moving forward. But I wasn't, super discouraged by that game the other night just for that exact reason, Mike. Like you said, it was obviously a game where, Joel wasn't having his best game because of the doubles, and that a lot of the looks that they had were good open looks from guys that would like to see knock down shots. Tobias had somewhat of an off night. Seth, Danny Green, those guys that are there specifically to knock down shots, they just weren't knocking them down, which, it happens sometimes. I don't think the Sixers and Doc specifically were, overly concerned with, the way that game unfolded. I think they kind of just chalked it up to one of those games where, they were off and they weren't hitting their shots. But, against a team like the Raptors, who you guys mentioned coming in, they've had a tough time against in recent years. There's a chance that this is a team that they could see again, in a playoff series down the road in the first couple of rounds. So I think that for the Sixers, they really do want to come back, with a bounce back performance. And a big part of that is going to be to, just knock down the shots that are presented to them, especially if the Raptors, double Joel like they did last game. Those shots are going to be there again for the other players.
How do you view the 7+ minutes in the fourth quarter without a field goal? They finished with 2 field goals in the last 8:48. Is that just a product of what we're talking about, missed shots, that type of night? Or do you look at it, when they played the Lakers, they had some tough moments in the fourth quarter. There was a Charlotte game where they were up big and they had some tough moments in the fourth quarter. Is this a common theme in the fourth or just one of those nights as well?
I think it's a combination of both things, Brody. This is something, obviously, that's been an issue for the Sixers going back to the Brett Brown days where they would seem to just have extended lulls of minutes of game time where they just aren't getting baskets. This year it hasn't been as much as an issue because they've had Joel as kind of the safety blanket to just throw the ball down to. But I think it's representative of something that Daryl Morey is probably going to try to address leading up to the trade deadline. And that's, bringing in another guy that's really just capable of generating his own offense when things in the, the system itself are breaking down. If Joel's out or not, not having his best game. The Sixers really lack a guy that they can kind of just, throw the ball out to on the perimeter and say, here, get us a bucket. And that's something that they've, lacked for a while. They obviously have addressed it to in a bit. Shake Milton is, decent at that. He can do it. But I do think that they need, another playmaker, a ball handler on the perimeter that when things get tough like that and the defenses are, keying in on Joel and the shots aren't falling, you need a guy that you can just rely on to go and get you a bucket. So I think that, some of it was definitely the result of the shooters just having an off night. And I don't expect another big gap like that without a field goal made tonight. But I do think that it's something that, Daryl Morey and the front office obviously have taken note of. And it's something they'll, probably try to address between now and the trade deadline at the end of next month.
All right, so a couple things on that. You tweeted out the Nets are a problem. So what do the Sixers need to do if they're not on that level to get to that level?
I don't think it's a matter of, one move that you can really make. There's not really a player for the Sixers that they can acquire that's going to move the needle that much to put them, on Brooklyn's level talent-wise. I think the Sixers already have the for lack of a better word, the special ingredient to go against Brooklyn, and that's just Joel. Brooklyn does not have any interior size behind DeAndre Jordan. They don't have a lot of front court depth. So Joel is going to create a huge mismatch for them. But, Brooklyn's creeping up on the Sixers in the standings. They're just half a game back now. And the really scary thing to me is that they haven't even really had the trio of their guys for many games together. Obviously, they're pulling games out right now with Durant on the sideline. Kyrie was out for a while. Obviously, James Harden's still getting acclimated to the team. The fact that they've had, all kind of the turnover and the changes that they've had so far already this season, and they're already 20-12, half game back from the Sixers. I think that's a pretty scary sight for Philadelphia, considering the fact that, once obviously Durant gets fully healthy and he's out there with Harden and Kyrie for the back half of the season, they're probably going to be piling up the wins, and, they're just a team that's going to be extremely tough to stop. I don't think that there's one thing specifically that the Sixers can do to get on that level. I think they just need to continue to, play their game and do some smaller moves to solidify their bench leading up to the deadline. Like I was saying, another playmaker, potentially a big that can stretch the floor, and just make sure they're as deep and as formidable as possible to go up against that team that has, three of the best offensive players in the league.
So if you were Daryl Morey, you would be out on Kyle Lowry, considering the compensation of moving Danny Green, and you probably have to package up a significant amount of your bench, which is already playing pretty poorly at the moment. You're out on Kyle Lowry.
To an extent, Brody, I would definitely have to see the return. If obviously as long as you're keeping Ben and Joel in the mix, I think it is something you would consider. But at the same time, you have to look and say, is Kyle Lowry on an expiring contract the type of player that's really going to take you to the next level and get you on that Brooklyn level this season? Or would you be better off to kind of, get some smaller pieces in there that could complement what they have now, and, just try to roll with the current rotation? Obviously, on paper, Lowry would be a great addition for the Sixers, but I would have to imagine that the asking price, it's going to be pretty high given how well the Raptors have been playing and how big of a part he's been of that franchise for years. I'm sure they're not super eager to part ways with him. So to me, I would definitely consider it, and I'd have to look at the specs and what Toronto was asking for. But it seems to me, a Kyle Lowry or like a Zach LaVine deal that's been popped up, it seems like it's probably going to be a little bit too much asking price wise for something that the Sixers are willing to do this season, unless they really are, want to shift things up in terms of their rotation moving forward on the back half of the season.
Yeah, well, MKB, you probably have a little bit more knowledge of this, but it's got to be – Danny Green has to be in that deal, right? I mean, to get the money to match, he has to be in that deal. That's only half the money, though. So you're talking about, if you're Toronto, why do I want Danny Green, Cork Maz, Brad? Like, people want to throw Mike Scott. Like, that doesn't make any sense for them. You're going to have to give up a Thibault, a Milton, or probably a Maxey, and then a Milton would be the third option. And I'm wondering if the Sixers want to do that for possibly a rental.
Exactly, Mike. I think that's the big thing. There's no reason that Toronto is going to want to give up Kyle Lowry for pennies on a dollar. He's a guy that's coming off the books next year. And I think this year they're looking to make a run. They had a rough start to the season, but they're, climbing up now. They're fifth in the East. They, beat the Nets. They beat the Sixers. They beat the Bucks twice in a row last week. They're looking like a team that's really formidable. And I think, if Kyle Lowry is going to be leaving Toronto after this offseason, the indications I've got is he and they would probably both want to give it, one more try this year, give it another run in the postseason and see how far they could do. And if they were going to move him, like you said, Mike, you nailed it. I think they'd want something that's not just, Danny Green's coming off the books. Mike Scott's, a fine rotation piece, but he's not a needle mover. If they were going to do this, and get rid of Lowry, that would signify, at least somewhat of a rebuild in Toronto, and they would definitely want, I think a young player or two to, build with moving forward, whether that's, like you said, Matisse or Maxey or Milton. The Sixers would have to part with at least one of those guys, if not two of them. And at this point, like I said, you have to decide if that's something that you really want to do for half a season of Kyle Lowry. If they think that he's really the guy that can come in with Ben and Joel and take this team to a championship level this season, that's their prerogative. But for me, I think it's definitely something you would have to think, pretty hard about before pulling the trigger.
How impressed are you with the current stretch of Ben Simmons? He's almost shooting 80% from the line. I never thought in a million years I'd see that.
And that's all we've needed to see from him. I think, to me, an aggressive Ben Simmons, not a Ben Simmons that's coming out there and jacking up threes or forcing up jump shots. Just a Ben Simmons that's in attack mode from early on in the game. He obviously, he was lacking that early in the season. It just was not there, the consistent aggression. And now, like you said, for the past 3 weeks, it seems like it's been, I don't know if something clicked and maybe he's feeling a little bit healthier now. I know he still had some lingering issues coming into the season off the injury from last year. And to me, the biggest thing is, like you said, Brody, the fact that he's just so confident at the free throw line, and that translates to him being more aggressive on the court. And that's obviously great for the Sixers when he's attacking. It pulls the defense in, draws, the guys in, creates open shots for the others. And the Sixers need, not only his passing, but they need him to put up, 18, 20, 22, 24 points a game. Joel can't be out there scoring 40 every night. And Ben has the skill set to, provide a mismatch for the Sixers on the offensive end. So it's a huge positive to me. And I think, this is what the Sixers need from Ben moving forward, a guy that's going to come out and in attack mode. And I think, like you said, the fact that he's definitely uptick in his free throws recently has translated to him feeling more confident at going to the line and in turn more confident, attacking the basket, which is all good for the Sixers.
NBA writer Michael Kaskey-Blomain from CBS Sports. Now, you just wrote about Joel Embiid on how he's taken his game to another level. I want to get your thoughts on both that and if we're seeing kind of Simmons evolve right before our very eyes. Like sometimes you see it from one off season to the next season that, hey, this guy looks like he's gotten better. It feels like Ben is evolving in season, and it feels like Joel evolved in the off season.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, Mike. It definitely took Ben, a little while to find his comfort zone early in this season. But I think, outside of him, expanding his perimeter shot, which obviously we've all talked about at length, the game he's playing over the past few weeks is the best that we've seen him play, I think, in his career up to this point, in terms of he's still, a top tier defender in the NBA, first team all defense, potentially a defensive player of the year later this year, still creating the looks for everybody else. And then he's, attacking the basket and knocking down the free throws. That's all you can really ask of him at this point. So I think that he's definitely, and again, I don't know if there was a conversation that was had or if it's something that just clicked, for him in the middle of the season. But over the past 3 weeks to a month, since right before that Lakers game, that in the Celtics game a few weeks back, I think we've just seen a different Ben. And this is, why the Sixers didn't want to trade him for James Harden. Even at the time, he wasn't playing, his great basketball, but they knew what he was capable of on both ends of the floor. And he just does so many things for the Sixers on both ends. And it's huge for, what they're trying to do. And in terms of Joel, I do think, he deserves a lot of credit, obviously not for his play, but it's clear that he, took this offseason. If you compare how he looked in the bubble and at the end of last season, how he's looked this year, it's night and day. And I think he just deserves, a lot of credit for putting the work in, making sure he's in good shape, listening to and, working on issues he's had in the past, like reacting to double teams and putting the ball on the floor and taking too many threes. It's all the things that I think people have said about his game in the past that he needs to do to take it to a next level. It really seems like over the offseason, he took that all to heart and put it together. And now, 5 years into his career, we're seeing, everything just clicking for Joel.
Their net efficiency on and off the court. So much, Michael, has been made of, can they play together? Can they not? Now, when they didn't play together, Ben had 42. They didn't play together. Joel had 50. They did play together. They lost. But that's neither here nor there. The net efficiency rating when they're both on the court together is astronomically better when it's just Embiid or just Simmons or they're both off. So it is clear not only can they play together, they need them to play together.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's not even, a question at this point to me. If you're watching the Sixers, they can absolutely coexist. And having, the shooters around them now that they have has been a huge help. And it takes you back to 2 seasons ago, I think, when they had that run where they lost to Toronto in the second round. That their efficiency rating that season was great. And it's just a matter of, I think, surrounding them with the right type of players. That didn't happen last year. Obviously, you bring in Al and Josh Richardson, and it just kind of clogged things up. But when you have Joel and Ben, who, not only can they play together, they very clearly enjoy playing, with each other. They've said it multiple times that they emphasize and help each other out. And I think you're just seeing this year, Ben playing at such a high level and Joel playing at such a high level, and the guys around them doing their job. So to me, the concern that they couldn't play together was always, somewhat overblown. When you have 2 all-star, superstar caliber players, to me, it's a matter of coaching, and it's a matter of, filling out the roster around them. And I think that's been a problem in the past. This year, they both, responded very well to Doc and what he's come in and tried to do. And the roster around them has been, beneficial to both of them. So they're both clicking. And I think, like you said, they need them both to be, at their best moving forward if they're going to make the deep run that I think a lot of us hope that they're capable of making.
All right. We'll see tonight against the Raptors. You can listen to the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. It's a 7:30 Tampa tip for the Raptors, who are playing down in Tampa, and then they play the Mavs and the Cavs to wrap up the month of February, the Pistons and the Jazz, and then we'll have to check out the second half schedule when that comes out. Michael Kaskey-Blomain at The Real Mike KB joined us here on the Sports Bash. Check him out at CBS Sports, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. MKB, take care, man.
Thanks, fellas. Have a good one.
All right, brother. That's MKB here, as always, on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.